Varadkar, thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Well, thanks for having me, and congratulations on your new appointment.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I'm still on probation, as I'm constantly told, so I'll have to watch my P's and Q's. It's now, I think, 5:30. We rang the cath lab a while ago in Waterford, and closes at 5 o'clock, as you know.
Yeah.
It's a reality for people down here. Reality for me, people that it could be in high risk demographics for heart attacks. What do you think about that?
Well, first of all, I know it's a huge issue, and I get that, and I know it's been a huge issue for years, and it's one that I've been interested in, obviously being a politician and a Taoiseach for the whole country, and also being a former health minister and a former medical doctor. So I understand that is an issue of huge concern to people in Waterford and the South East more broadly. I think it is important to say, and sometimes this doesn't come across in the debate, is that the vast majority of heart attacks can be treated 24/7 in University Hospital Waterford and to a very good standard. So the cardiologists, the cardiac nurses, the technicians do a very good job there. And if you have a heart attack in Waterford, in 70 or 80% of cases, it can be treated in Waterford without the need to be transferred to any other hospital. And I think maybe that doesn't come across now. It is of course true, as you know, that for a particular type of heart attack, the treatment of choice is what's called primary PCI, and that should be done within 120 minutes of first medical contact. And that's the crux of the issue here. People having to go to Cork, obviously, and that not being available here in Waterford. What you need, as your listeners will know, I'm sure at this stage, because there's been such a debate on this issue, to have a 24/7 primary PCI centre is really a couple of things. You need a second cath lab. You need probably 7 to 10 interventional cardiologists who are willing to work a 24/7 rota. Not easy to find, not many unemployed in the world, and very sought after people. And you also need a critical mass of population so that they do about 250 cases a year. So the first step has to be delivering a second cath lab for Waterford. We're going to do that, and that progress is at long last happening, and the tender for the design has gone out, and we'd anticipate planning permission happening later in the year, and I'd say construction next year.
It still doesn't get away from the fact that we will not have 24/7 cardiac care in the southeast for that 20–30% of the population, or those that suffer particular types of heart attack, for possibly another 3 years. Now, I know we can talk about staffing, we can talk about all those issues. In a way, the Heritage report put it regarding certain issues. Political intervention then happened because you decided as a government to say, we want to prioritise this. So in a way, you pushed aside the Heritage report.
Yeah, like
so there is a political issue to be made on this.
There is, and there's also a political issue to be exploited by some people on this too. And there's one thing that I won't do, because I have too much respect for the people of Waterford. I'm not going to make a promise that I'm not sure I can deliver. It's the easiest thing in politics for people to promise something, particularly not to election, but not being able to deliver to something different. And what I know we can deliver, and we will deliver it, is a second cath lab for Waterford.
But why are you only doing it now, Taoiseach? Why are you only doing it now? Like compared to 5 years ago, like you talk about funding and talk about staffing, like why wasn't this done a few years ago?
Oh, because this time 5 years ago we were still cutting budgets. We had a major financial and economic crisis.
So it's got to do with money?
Well, the reason why we didn't do a lot of things 5 years ago, like 5 years ago was 2014. We were in the middle of a financial crisis. It was water charges, it was pay cuts, so there was very little we could do 4 or 5 years ago. In the last 2 or 3 years, we're in a very different space. The economy's going well again. Unemployment in Waterford is down more than half, for example. Taxes are coming in, so we had money to do things we couldn't do years ago. But like I say, there are some things that can be done through political will and through money, and a second cath lab is one of those. What I can't promise you is being able to recruit and retain 7 to 10 interventional cardiologists who are willing to work 24/7. What I can't promise you is that there'll be a critical mass of cases in the southeast that makes it sustainable. And no politician can promise you that. So I'm not going to make a promise that I can't, hand on heart, say that I can definitely deliver on. What I can deliver on is on the second cath lab, and we'll get that done.
And that hand on heart has been the image of the campaigns on this. So in a way you are admitting that it is a political issue, it's a funding issue, and that in a way gives lie to the idea that it's a health issue. Because if it was purely a health issue, then we wouldn't have the situation we're in.
It's a political issue, it's a health issue, and it's a funding issue. But funding is no longer an issue because we have money in the country again. And the greater scheme of things, building a second cath lab and staffing it, even 24/7, actually isn't hugely expensive. It's expensive, but not as expensive as lots of other things that we're doing. Like, for example, the new wing, the Dunmore wing, which will be opened this year. Excellent top-class palliative care unit, hospice care for the southeast, 24 more beds. That's costing a hell of a lot more than a second cath lab will cost, and will cost a hell of a lot more to staff. So money is no longer the issue. Health is an issue, and the truth is that if you want to run a 24/7 primary PCI centre anywhere in the world, you do need a critical mass of specialists, and you need a critical mass of population and cases, so that those doctors retain their skills and can deliver quality service. No politician can change that fact.
Politics.
They can promise to, but they're not being honest with you.
Politics is all local.
Like I say, talking about the hospital though, and I did mention, I would like to mention again, I think it is important to acknowledge that there is a big investment happening in the hospital, and that new wing, the Dunmore wing, will be open this year. If I've the privilege to be invited to come down and do it, I will do it. And new palliative wing, extra beds, single rooms, a great improvement in healthcare.
If you're still Taoiseach,
if
there's not an election between now and
then. And perhaps I'll be able to turn the sod in the second cath lab at the same time.
Okay. All politics is local. When have you spoken last to Deputy John Deasy?
About 2 weeks ago.
How is he?
He's good. He's working very closely with us, obviously, on issues in America. So he was very involved in the Pelosi visit, the visit of the Speaker of the House and her team to Ireland in Holy Week. So
would you expect him to be a candidate in any forthcoming election for Fine Gael?
Look, that's a decision for him. We have a selected candidate in Senator Paddy Coffey. We will have another candidate, at least another candidate. Certainly one from West Waterford, probably one from another part of the county as well.
You may have three candidates, because John Cummins' name has obviously been mentioned.
We'll certainly have more than one. We have one selected candidate, Paddy Coffey. We certainly have two. We may have three, but it's for John to make that decision himself. And
has he given any indication at this stage?
We've had a conversation about it, but it is for him to either confirm or deny that he's contesting next general election.
And have you given him a timescale to do that? Because obviously you'd like to plan, and the party would like to plan.
I haven't given him any deadline or ultimatum or anything like that, but we had a very frank and honest discussion about it a few weeks ago. And we have European local elections coming up on the 24th of May. I anticipate on the 24th of May there'll be a few councillors in the county and city who may do very well, who may wish to be candidates, and I think in fairness to them, they'd want to know sort of by the end of the summer anyway as to where they stand and whether they should be gearing up for a general election or not.
This week the party was thrown into crisis in Waterford with the resignation as Director of Electors of Maurice Cummins. As you know, Maurice, very well respected, former leader of the Seanad. Councillor saying the split between the East and the West, and obviously issues that Maurice Cummins has brought up. A lot of people unhappy, for example, Ian Noctor is put in as a candidate or prospective candidate down in Fine Gael, down in Dungarvan. So are there problems with Fine Gael in Waterford?
Well,
there obviously are. How do you analyse them?
I know Maurice very well, and I know John Cummins very well. Really, really great councillor, and worked with Maurice obviously when he was leader of the Seanad. So look, I'm sorry that he took the decision to step down as Director of Elections, but fundamentally we're a democratic party. We select candidates at a convention. Anyone can put their name before the members. Or
the executive imposes them without others knowing about it. Damien Gagan says he didn't know about Ian Noctor being put into Dungarvan.
Well, what happens in the first instance is the members in each local area select candidates. Anyone can put their name forward. You don't even need to be a member of the party. You could if you wanted to. Anyone can put their name forward and they get selected. And then afterwards the party comes in and adds extra candidates where we think there's a gap. And what we have now is a very good set of candidates in Waterford. Met them all today. 12 candidates across the city and the county, and I think people are going to be very impressed by some of them.
You still haven't answered my question.
Sorry, what was the question again? My apologies.
A very highly respected former leader of the Seanad has resigned in disgust at how the party is operating in the city and the county.
Well, Maurice disagrees with some of the decisions that were made to add candidates and has stepped down as Director of Elections as a result, and I respect his decision. But actually, the people who decide who gets elected are the people of Waterford City and County, and we're putting 12 top class candidates on the ballot paper. Some of them sitting councillors, some of them new to politics. Met them all today, heard from them all individually about the issues that they're hearing on the doors. And it's the people of Waterford who'll decide who gets elected and who doesn't, not me and not any party member or party official.
We had Phil Murphy on the programme here just a few weeks ago. 3 years she has to wait for an appointment just to see a rheumatoid arthritis consultant. So many issues that we could talk about, and how unemployment is down quite low. But social issues, hospital waiting lists, capital overexpenditure with Children's Hospital. For example, a friend of mine up in Dublin recently in a hotel, and there's 20 families in that hotel, and they're homeless. And they're told not to go down to breakfast at the same time as ordinary paying people. Are ye addressing social issues as well as you could? Because those social issues, like if you're doing so well in the economy, and Fine Gael has prided itself in the economy, you should be higher up in the ratings, you should be higher up in the polls. Those social issues, is that where you're falling down?
I think in any country at any point in time, there's always going to be issues. You know, we're never going to wake up one morning and live in a country that doesn't have problems, whether economic or social, and you have to try and deal with them one by one. And you've acknowledged that we've done well in the economy. Unemployment is at an 11-year low. Incomes are rising again. Taxes are going down again. Living standards are improving. And there are social issues where I think we have made a difference. You know, there's been major social change in Ireland, and the referendums reflected that. On education, we're close to top in terms of the league tables in the world. A lot of that's down to our really excellent teachers and educators. Take childcare, for example. Just in the last couple of years, maternity benefit brought in for new dads. Parental leave being brought in, subsidised childcare. So there are areas where we are making social progress as well.
What about the ones you're falling down on? Because when you were in opposition, you were constantly very, very good at highlighting where the other parties, the government, Fianna Fáil at the time, would be falling down on issues.
Yeah, and you know, I'm not denying for a second that we don't have major issues that we need to deal with. Housing is absolutely one of those. The only solution, in my view, not the only solution, but centre to the solution of the housing crisis is increasing supply. We need more houses, more homes, more apartments to buy, to rent, and also social housing. So last year we built about 18,000 houses in Ireland, more than any year in the last decade. We need to do better again this year. We need to get to something closer to 25,000. I wish we could ramp it up quicker. We can't.
I don't want to go through
as quickly as we can.
I don't want to go through a litany of things regarding things that Social Justice Ireland would stay. The 250,000 children, over 100,000 living in poverty.
Yeah, but that's not correct.
Okay. Back in 2017, were you bold enough to suggest the homelessness crisis would be solved by 2019? More houses will be built than are needed. That obviously hasn't happened. So, are you failing in that regard?
On housing, we're delivering.
You're delivering with the highest
18,000 new homes built last year, more than any year in the last decade. 10,000 people who've been helped through the Help to Buy scheme to buy their first home, and thousands of families now every year being lifted out of homelessness. The difficulty we have is that there are as many, if not slightly more, coming into homelessness. So look, we're not on top of these issues yet, but we are making real progress, and people can see that around the country with all the new homes being built. Needs to happen quicker. We're doing everything we can to speed that up.
And yet on Dublin, for example, on council houses in Dublin, like I have some figures there regarding the provision of 10% social housing in certain levels. The council has actually decided we won't go along with certain areas for that. So the provision of social housing.
Well, we shouldn't forget, of course, that Sinn Féin is the biggest party on Dublin City Council. I think if that changes on the 24th of May, we'll see that council improve its performance. Councils where Fine Gael is strong, like Fingal, like Dún Laoghaire, do a lot better.
One issue I want to touch on, the Broadcasting Amendment Bill, mentioned it before. It's about supporting independent radio stations around the country, real jobs provided by here in the broadcasting centre, based solely on advertising. There was a talk that you're basically going to, the Fine Gael policy is to scrap the levy completely, government policy is to reduce the levy. So which is it going to be? Is it what the former Taoiseach promised the government would do, or the current communications promising now?
Well, we're going to reduce it first anyway.
We'll reduce it first. When is it going to happen?
Do bear in
legislation?
mind we're not a majority government, so we can't do everything we like to do.
Well, Fianna Fáil are in favour of it as well, so I think you get it through fairly quickly. I know there are other priorities, but what's the state with the legislation?
So legislation is due to be published in this quarter, Q2 of 2019.
So we're looking at June.
And we'd anticipate having the legislation through by the end of the year, and that'll allow us to reduce the broadcasting levy, which is something we want to do because we want to support independent broadcasters and local broadcasters, and particularly at a time with such inaccurate information online, a lot of fake news out there. We rely on WLR and other stations like it to give people access to proper news, proper debate, even things like births, marriages and deaths, a really important service that only independent broadcasters and local radio can do.
I know we're under pressure for time, so I'm going to go straight on to the mayoralty. Why do you believe change is needed? Is it not working okay as it is?
I think it can work a lot better. One thing that we want to see happen as a government, that I want to make sure happens as Taoiseach, is that we've much better balanced development in Ireland. That our cities, Waterford, Limerick and Cork, grow at twice the rate of Dublin between now and 2040. And part of that is investment in infrastructure, and that's happening. But a big part of it as well is local political leadership. And that's why we're giving people in Waterford, in Limerick and in Cork City an opportunity to elect their own mayor, somebody who will be a representative for their city and county in dealing with government, somebody who has a mandate behind them, somebody who's directly elected by them, and somebody who can shift power away from unelected officials through somebody who's accountable to you, who you elect, who you can re-elect if they do a good job, or you can get rid of if they don't.
If a mayor is elected, he or she will effectively be against, I suppose, the 4 sitting TDs. They won't want him or her to succeed. They're going to feel threatened.
Well, they might, and it's interesting, when I talk to people in business, when I talk to the trade unions and so on, they're very much in favour of this change. The unions have backed it publicly. Most of the chambers of commerce, people who pay the rates, back it. I think most of the public will back it. Most
of your councillors in the city and county are against it.
Yeah, but doesn't that say something to you?
Yes, it means that you're going to disempower councillors. This is one of I have the document here in front of me, okay? And it says there's a disempowerment of councillors. Effectively, what's going to happen? Okay, if a road needs fixing, there's one decision maker at present. Person goes to the local councillor. He or she contacts a local area engineer. They organise to fix the road. Under the new system, the local person will bypass the councillor, go straight to the mayor, but he or she won't have the final say if there are any issues over competing resources. And competing resources are very, very important. As it's not the mayor's call, it's the area engineer's call, but he or she is answerable to the chief executive.
No, the power of councillors will be exactly the same. What will change is a shift in power from the chief executive, who's not elected, to the mayor, who is. So at the moment, for example, the chief executive proposes the budget, the chief executive proposes the
only under certain functions.
All functions except those that relate to individual decisions, like an individual planning application, a staff decision, or an individual housing allocation. Those big decisions, the budget, the development plan, new policies, Part 8 schemes, they will all be proposed by the mayor instead of the unelected manager. The individual councillors won't have any less influence or power on the system. What they won't get is what they have at the moment, which is the opportunity to be mayor for a year. But I don't think being mayor for a year is what's needed for a modern growing city region like Waterford. You need somebody who's there for 5 years, who can see things through, have real influence, not just be a figurehead, not just be someone who chairs a meeting and attends events, someone who can actually drive through a programme of reform and development. Okay. And that requires a longer mandate than 1 year.
The minister doesn't provide services. That at present is done in a non-political way. That's going to change. There's only going to be one person with responsibility, and who's that going to be? And I've raised an issue regarding roads, for example, and I've read the document 3 times. So there's no problem with, we'd say, the mayor having responsibility for policy and representation. But regarding services and delivery of issues, this is the main problem, that people are saying it's not going to work. It's very, very difficult to understand this document, where it will actually work.
No, I might be misunderstanding your argument here, but the role of councillors will be the same. So say, for example, you go to a councillor with an issue over a road, an issue over a streetlight.
I'll be more specific. The role of the chief executive.
They won't go straight to the mayor.
The role of the chief executive versus the mayor. This is where the problem will arise.
That role, that relationship will be different.
And it's not set out properly in this document. It's just not set out. For example, the executive functions, on page 32, it says, there will be certain planning functions which is described above would remain with the chief executive. This could potentially lead to added complexity and possible confusion over responsibility for executive functions, making appropriate accountability more challenging to achieve. So it's basically admitting that there's a problem with what you're proposing.
No, let me clarify that. The decisions that will still be with the Chief Executive are individual planning decisions. But when it comes to local area plans, when it comes to the development plan, all those big ticket items, the Mayor will be the one who's making the proposal. But bear in mind what this is. This is a plebiscite to ask the people of Waterford, of Limerick and of Cork City whether they want to go down this road. If they give us the green light to go down this road, then we'll have to do the detailed legislation after that. If they don't, we won't. But I think this is a big move in the right direction. It means more local government. It means a mayor that you voted for, accountable to you, has to deliver for you.
And I've asked you a specific question regarding what's in this, regarding delivery of, for example, roads. And I'm not getting a clear answer, Taoiseach, in terms of... A clear answer because the question is that the executive functions will change, that there will be nobody in charge of who makes that final decision, who gets the priority for fixing that particular road.
The way it currently works is councillors have no executive functions whatsoever.
Yes.
All executive functions lie with unelected officials.
Yes.
The big change here...
And they're answerable to the council, though, every year in terms of budgets.
Yeah, the big change here is that some of those executive functions that are currently held by unelected officials will transfer to the mayor, who will still be fully responsible to the council. The mayor is accountable to the council. Yeah,
only under certain functions, I would argue. And I think that... Are you saying that that document is completely and utterly thorough in analysing how the mayoralty would work?
I think it's very thorough, but obviously there'll have to be legislation to follow up on that. You know, the same as would happen with any referendum. When the referendum is passed, or if it is passed, then you need to follow up on that with the detailed legislation. But that document, for anyone who has a chance to read it, will give you a pretty good summary of the direction of travel that we want to go in. But only if the people want it.
And I've read it 3 times and I encourage people to at least try and read it once. Can I ask you...
Well, whether you read it or not, it's as simple as this. You know, do you want to be able to elect...
But the devil's in the detail as well.
Or do you want the status quo where you have a mayor who's elected by councillors, serves a year, but the real power rests with an unelected official appointed probably from the Customs House in Dublin.
And one of the main problems a lot of people have had on the streets, and that's reflected on calls to this programme, is the cost. So it's 130,000 for the mayor. He or she can bring in their own staff. The cost could be up to 330,000 a year.
Yeah, the cost arises there because this is a real job. You know, if you're somebody who's a school principal running a school,
but 330,000. That's a lot of money.
Well, that's the cost, obviously, of the entire office and the staff and so on.
Yeah.
But you know, say for example,
who's going to pay for that?
It'll be paid for out of taxation.
Out of council funds.
Well, out of all funds that the council receives, whether it's
but it's going to come out of the council budget.
All spending by the council comes out of the council budget.
So it'll be basically back on to the people of Waterford City and County to pay for this 330,000. Will there be any money from government for it?
Yes. The way local authorities are funded is they get their revenue sources from the local property tax, from commercial rates, from charges, and from central government.
How much?
It'll be out of that pot.
How much of that will come from it? Like, how much? Can you tell the people in Waterford how much it's going to cost them regarding the cost of the mayoralty?
It'll cost in the region of about 300,000 a year. Some of that will come from central funds, some of it will come from local government. That all depends on each individual council and what their breakdown of funding is. But you know, rather than focusing merely on the cost of an office, think of the value of it. You know, there's a reason why cities like New York, cities like London, cities like Paris have directly elected mayors, because that person carries real weight. They're recognised when they go to the capital, when they go to government departments looking for money and investment, because they have a real mandate of their own, bigger than any TD has, probably 30, 40,000 votes. They know when they travel internationally that they carry some weight. So, you know, I would believe that a mayor from Cork, for example, with 40,000 votes behind them, coming to a government minister or a government department looking for millions, never mind hundreds of thousands, is going to get a much better hearing than somebody who is unelected or somebody who's just there for a year with no direct mandate.
If Cork and Limerick vote for it and Waterford don't, that means Waterford doesn't have its directly elected mayor?
It means Waterford will be left behind, but it would be a pity if the people of Waterford decide to be left behind.
You're going to find it very difficult to get this across the line, because a lot of your councillors will be actively campaigning against this, or not campaigning at all.
Well, you look who's in favour of it. Broadly speaking, the business community, the trade unions who represent the people who work in the council, who know how councils take over, and those who are reluctant about it are some politicians and officials.
Will there be an election this time of the year? This time next year? When are we talking?
I don't know, but I'm regularly asked that question, Damien, and I'm not planning one. You know, I'm busy focused on the business of government, getting Ireland through Brexit, making sure that our economy keeps growing and that all parts of the country and everyone in the country feel the benefits of that economic growth, delivering
jobs for the regions rather than just Dublin, for example. Dublin.
100,000 of the 150,000 jobs created in the last 3 years were created outside of Dublin.
A lot of business people down here would say that the IDA, when it comes to Waterford, they don't realise that there's so much happening.
And I'd say there are 7,000 IDA jobs now in Waterford, and there's going to be more.
Taoiseach, thank you very much.
Thank you.